I'm Christine, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to talk about my 5-star reads for October through December of 2024, so let's get into it. So I had so much fun doing this video for all of 2024, just talking about all of my 5-star reads for each quarter. I think going into 2025, I'm going to do it every 2 months just to keep the recs a little more current or recent, or, you know, ones I recently read I can then talk about and gush about to you. But for 2024, I ended up doing it for every 3 months. So I had the one for January, February, March, and then another for April, May, June, then July, August, September, and then today's is October, November, December, which you get the idea. I'm going to link all the other ones down below. So if you want to go back and check out any of my 5-star reads from throughout the year, you can. These are all of my true 5-star reads. So I did not include rereads, which I might do going into the new year, because I feel like even though they were rereads for me, they might be new book recs for you. So let me know what you think about that, if people should include their rereads for these kind of rec videos as well. So on top of being like new to me 5-star reads, they were also like true 5 stars. Like I didn't include any 4.5 stars, so they were all like the cream of the crop, so to speak, for me for the year. For 2024, I read over 400 books for the year. I think it was like 426, I want to say. And throughout the year, I had 56 5-star reads. So again, you can see all of my 5-star reads from the year below. And we're going to chat about the ones for the last 3 months of the year. So excited to do this. Some of these months were so good. So many amazing new reads. I'm looking at them down here, and I just had such a good time. Some new to me authors, all the things, some favorites. I cannot wait. So we are going to get into these and start off with October. I just do them by month. If you want to see more of my thoughts or full reviews on any of these books, any of the books that I ever read, I do review every book that I read on Goodreads, and that is always linked in the description of my video. So you can go see all of my Goodreads reviews, all the things I'm currently reading, all of that info. I also link all the books and authors that I talk about in all of my videos as well. So you can always see that in the description of the video as well. So if you want to go back and see which one I was talking about, go grab these books yourselves because they're amazing. They're all linked below as well. So let's get into it with all of that info out of the way. All right, for the month of October, I read 39 books for the month, and these were my 4 5-star reads for the month. So let's get into them. All right, first up is The Last Train to Key West by Chanel Clayton. You know, around here, I am a Chanel Clayton stan now. I ended up reading her historical fictions in the fall of 2024, and I became obsessed. I went down an entire binge of all of her books. This one definitely remains one of my favorites from her. So this is The Last Train to Key West. This is the 3rd book in her Perez family series. I love them to pieces. I have an entire author guide to her historical fiction books, which you can go check out, because she has this series that all connects, and then she has some other standalones as well, which I also love. So like I mentioned, this is a historical fiction series. One thing I like about Chanel Clayton's writing is that she has very fast-paced stories. She also includes romances, because I believe she was a contemporary romance author first, I want to say. I think she has some other contemporary romances out there, which I need to go check out. She always has romances intertwined in her books as well, and she just blends those with the story, with a fast-paced plot, these amazing families, with a ton of history as well. So I love learning all the things I've learned in her books. All of her books include things about Cuba, which I believe is where her own like family history ties in as well. This book, so amazing. I loved it so much. This one takes place in the 1930s, 1935 specifically, and it really heavily focuses and tells the story of the 1935 Labor Day hurricane that hit the Florida Keys. So at the time, this was the deadliest, strongest storm in like recorded history to hit US soil. And then it was also like a category 5 before category 5, like before they categorized storms. So a lot of that information in the story. And so in here, we follow 3 different women's POVs, and they all kind of connect. And as the story goes on, you see how much they connect. And basically in here, they're all in the same place at the same time. This diner really features in the story as well. So one of the women, she works at the diner. She's pregnant. She's in an abusive relationship with her husband. So we follow her story. Another POV we get is a newlywed who recently came from Havana, from Cuba. Her husband brought her back to the US with him. And so she has all of that like newlywed bliss and just like wanting to have a happy marriage. And then the 3rd POV, we're following kind of like a socialite, a woman with money who comes down from the East Coast, like New York, Boston area, I want to say. And she's come down to find a man from her past and who was working on supposedly the road system that they're building, which if you read the story, you find out what happens with all of 3 of these women's stories and how they all connect. Like I said, the hurricane definitely features in the story as well. So you get to see all of that that kind of happening, the happening of it, and then after as well. Loved this one, 2 pieces. Highly recommend her historical fiction books. Even if you're like new or wanting to get into historical fiction, this series is really great because, like I said, she does already blend some romance in there as well, and just very fast paced. The characters will grip you immediately. Highly recommend. All right, switching it up a bit, my next 5-star read for October was Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. This one I kept seeing all over Instagram, all over TikTok. It was getting all of the hype, so I decided to give it a try and see what I thought of it as well. And I'm so glad I did because it was everything I ever wanted. It was so much fun, one of my favorites of the year. This book in particular, I highly recommend grabbing the audiobook. The audio was available through my library, through like Libby and Hoopla, so definitely check there if you can. The audio was fantastic. The hero in particular uses like a voice modulator at some parts, and so that was included in the audiobook, which just made it so much more fun. This is kind of classified as a dark romance, but I feel like it's kind of light on those dark themes. Like, yes, the hero is a masked man. He does kind of like thirst trapped videos where he wears a mask for reasons in his past and his history of why he is wearing a mask and doesn't really show his face out and about. And so I love him to pieces. He does do a little bit of stalkerish things to kind of get around the heroine and wants to get to know her more, but she's into it as well. She also is a trauma nurse and follows his thirst trap videos, and she doesn't realize that she kind of knows him in real life. And so once he figures it out, he decides to go and put himself in her house. And so kind of goes from there. So a little bit of like dark kind of stalkerish themes in the beginning, but then she's super into it and they just have like a lot of fun together. He's so obsessed with her. I love this one to pieces. It has like some fun humor, like wittiness as well, which I appreciate. I'm not like a rom-com girl, but witty humor I enjoy. So yeah, love this one. The banter, just so much fun. I highly recommend. All right, another 5-star read for me for October was The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. First of all, this edition from Barnes & Noble is stunning. The gold sprayed edges, I love gold so much. It has gorgeous end pages here as well, and then a really beautiful like naked hardcover as well. Stunning. So I have read Erin A. Craig for years. I think I've read all of her releases actually. I really enjoy her books, and this one in particular is a retelling of Grimm's Godfather Death. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I love this author's writing. They're just so atmospheric and really pull me into the story, and they're a little like dark and moody, which I super love that vibe. And so I had so much fun with this one. Actually, I was kind of waffling in the beginning. I was like maybe 4.5 stars, but then the ending just really gripped me and I actually got emotional reading this one. It's just like sometimes those books that you read, certain passages or certain moments at that moment in your life just hit really hard. That was the case with this one. It actually had me tearing up kind of at the end, which I wasn't expecting. So that's why I had to bump it up to 5 stars, and that's why it's on this list. So this one starts off with the heroine Hazel, and we are seeing her on all these different birthdays of hers throughout the years, and her godfather is literally the god of death, death himself. And so basically, I think on her 13th birthday, he ends up coming and deciding to take her back with him to the, I don't know, death realm, I guess you can say, where he wants to train her kind of as an apprentice and be a healer and kind of use her for ways that you see in the story unfolding. I just really enjoy this one. I love in here how the heroine, we get to see her kind of grow up and change, and her thoughts on life and death, and having that ability to choose sometimes, and that really weighing on her psyche of being able to kind of pick who gets to live, who gets to die, kind of things like that. I just really enjoyed that aspect of the story and getting to see kind of her struggles with either taking life, giving life, sometimes deciding if she's going to heal somebody or if she's not, and kind of seeing the repercussions of those choices of what will come if she heals somebody or if she doesn't heal somebody. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it just hit really hard for me, especially at the end. I got in my feels about it. Really love this one. It kind of gave me similar vibes to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which I loved years ago as well. So yeah, dark, moody, gothic, atmospheric. I really enjoyed this one. It's not my favorite from the author, but I highly recommend it at the end of the day. All right, and then my last 5-star read for October is Shattered Dreams by Natasha Madison. I love this one because of the flip cover. So we have the kind of discreet cover here, and then we have the couple cover as well, which I love that option. I was sent this by the author in a PR box, so I love it so much. This one I actually really enjoyed. This is the first book in her Dream series, and this author, I have read multiple of her series, multiple of her books over the years, and they're always kind of like 4 stars has always been the highest. This one was actually surprising to me. I loved it so much. It hit so well. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I mean, it's on this list for a reason. This book, if you want more of an emotional, angsty kind of driven story, this one is definitely this series in general, Basically in here, we are following these couples at the beginning of the story, this friend group, and they get into a car crash, and we see some of the members of that friend group end up passing away from the accident. And so this one picks up a couple years later. The hero and the heroine were both in that accident, and the hero ended up losing somebody that he loved, and so he has blamed the heroine for years for it. The heroine moved away from the town. Kind of everybody was kind of blaming her at the time, and so now it is years later, and she ends up coming back because I believe her father and brother, like the family business, they need help, and her father's ill, so she ends up coming back home. And so the hero and her are around one another again. Very hateful vibes, very emotional, because both of them have so much trauma and so much healing that they need to do, a lot of grief. There's some hate banging in here, which was perfection. Loved it so much. Highly recommend this one. I really loved seeing their healing together through everything. So good. So emotional. Loved it so much. All right, and then now we're on to November. So for November, I didn't do as well with 5-star reads. I had 2 5-star reads out of the 42 books I read for November, but these ones were perfection, so let's get into them. So first up is Broken Harbor by Catherine Cowles. First of all, this special edition is just a stunner. Got this in a PR box from Catherine. Love it so much. The shininess and the sprayed edges with the little bees. So stinking cute. So pretty. It came with gorgeous art and the end pages and kind of all of this swag as well. I love this series to pieces. I love all of Catherine Cowles' books so much. This is book 3 in her Sparrow Falls series, which is one of her current small town series that she's writing. So Catherine Cowles always blends romantic suspense and small town so well. This series in particular has an amazing found family group, and I love it so much. In this one, we have a hockey hero, which Catherine doesn't write sports people very often. And so in here, I love that we get a hockey hero, and the heroine is a single mom, and she's a baker in the small town. And so her son is actually in a hockey camp, and that is how she ends up meeting the hero. He is one of the coaches for the hockey camps, and he is also like a popular hockey player that her son is a fan of. I love this one to pieces. They end up kind of having this run-in meeting in the parking lot of the hockey arena, and that is kind of their meet cute moment. He's kind of instantly into her and wanting to help her because I think her tire broke down or something like that, and she is basically like, I got this on my own, like just go deal with your own things. And so they run into one another again when she goes into the hockey arena to see her son playing, and the hero is one of the coaches. And it is just so much fun if you love like a protective hero who wants to just take care of the heroine, her son. Like, ugh, it's just so good. All the books in the series have been 5 stars for me in 2024. Love them to pieces. I cannot wait for more books in the series in 2025. So yeah, Broken Harbor by Catherine Cowles. Highly recommend the entire Sparrow Falls series. All right, and then my last 5-star read for November is Take My Hand by Dolene Perkins Valdez. I love this one so much. This is a historical fiction. This takes place in Montgomery, Alabama. I think it's like 1973, post-segregation Alabama. And here we're following a Black nurse who ends up becoming a whistleblower on this huge case that actually happened in the US. And so basically she is a nurse. She's a new nurse, and she ends up taking on this job at a family planning clinic. And one of her first tasks, her first clients, are these 2 little girls who are 11 and 13, and she's tasked with giving them birth control. And so she starts to question things like, why is this happening? What is exactly going on? Does this reach deeper than just these 2 little girls? And it kind of goes from there. Like I said, it's based on true events, and it hits so hard, so definitely know that going in. So emotional. This one was just so good though, like the writing, not the story because that's like horrifying, but the actual writing was amazing. Like a couple chapters in, I knew it was going to be a 5-star read for me. I was obsessed with this author's writing. This deals a lot with racism and classism and reproductive injustice. It deals with the horrifying overreach that the US government has on people's lives, continues to have on people's lives today. Very hard hitting. Love this one to pieces. Very emotional though, so definitely know that going in, and definitely check content warnings if you need it. So good. Like just the writing in general and the story overall, so impactful and powerful and important. So yeah, Take My Hand. I can't wait to read even more from this author in the new year. All right, and then now we are into December. So I ended up having 8 5-star reads, 2 of which I don't have physical copies of, so that's why they're not here. But I had 8 5-star reads for December out of my 38 books read. So let's get into these. So December was an amazing month, a great month to end the year on with so many 5-star reads. The first one was Forever Wild by Rebecca Genshak. This is book 5 in her Wildcat Hockey series. This is a series I've been reading for years. I love Rebecca Genshak's writing. I feel like she's such an amazing sports romance author that I wish more people would pick up because her books are so good. This series in particular is one of my favorites from her. So this is the 5th and final book in the series, and this is a couple that people have been wanting for the longest time to get their story. So if you've read other books in the series, this one definitely ties in to those other books, especially like book 2, I want to say. So so yeah, I mean, it still is a good standalone as well, but you'll have a better appreciation for it if you've read the entire series. So in here, we are following the captain of the hockey team. He ends up getting injured at the beginning of the story, and he is kind of very grumpy and broody and just kind of at his home trying to get better, but also like pushing away anybody who's there to help him. And then the heroine is his teammate's younger sister, which she has been around the hockey team for the longest time. Her brother actually ended up taking her in as a teenager and raising her in his book in the story. So you've already seen her, like I said. And so I loved their energy together. He is grumpy broody. She is very sassy and spirited and just will like tell him off and call him out on things. And so basically it's the break for the season. And so most of the players are out of town, and the heroine is actually kind of doing odd jobs for them before she goes off to this kind of college offering program that she got into. And so she is kind of like checking mail, watering houseplants, taking care of their houses. And her, I think, sister-in-law or maybe her friend asks her like, hey, can you go check on the hero, the hockey captain, because he is there as well, and kind of like nobody's hearing from him. So she decides to go in and check on him, and it kind of goes from there. They have amazing banter and chemistry and that tension, that angst of kind of like sneaking around, / she's his teammate's sister. It's so good. Highly recommend. There are some emotional elements to this story as well, which I always appreciate in my romances. So I love it to pieces. Highly recommend. The series is so good. This one's definitely one of my favorites in the series. So yeah, check out the Wildcat Hockey series. All right, I actually read a lot of sports romances in December. So the next one is Play Along by Liz Tom 40. This one had been on my TBR for a while, like it came out in July, and I just put it off because I am that kind of person. If I know a book's going to be amazing, everybody loved it, I've loved the author and her series, I'm like, yeah, I'll read that later. I don't know why, it just happens, but I finally decided, okay, 2024, I cannot end the year without reading Play Along. So I read it and I loved it so much. Obviously, it's a 5-star read for me. This one is a we got married in Vegas, but now have to fake it and make it work type of situation. It's a sports romance. The hero in here is a baseball player, and the heroine is like a sports therapist doctor for the team as well. And so basically, the hero has pined for her for years. We've seen these characters throughout the series. This is book 4 in the Windy City series. I love the whole series to pieces. This one is my second favorite now because The Right Move just cannot be beat, but this one is so good. So basically in here, he's crushed on her for years. They end up in Vegas. They get drunkenly married and they decide to go back home, tell the team what happened. And when they're talking to either the general manager or the owner of the team, they basically tell them like, yeah, you guys actually can't be married. There can't be any like casual relationships. So if like this was a joke or something like that, like it's not going to work. Somebody's going to lose their job. And so the hero steps up and he's like, oh, it wasn't casual. Like I've been into her for years, finally convinced her to marry me. So now they have to fake it for the sake of their careers, and it goes from there. This one I had already loved the hero from seeing him throughout the series, but seeing the heroine in this one and getting to know more about her, I really connected with her in the story. She has a lot of very complicated family dynamics and relationships with her family members and her mom in particular, and so I loved seeing that explored in her story, and I was just so glad she found like this found family group with the hero and the team. It's just, it's just so good. I love them to pieces. This book was everything. Highly recommend if you're like me and was putting off this book for whatever reason, definitely go read it. It's so good. Play Along, Liz Tom 40. All right, and then the next one that I read is My Rival for Christmas by Sarah E. Green. I'll put up the cover here. I did do a beta read for this book, so I was reading it early as the author was writing chapters for it. Sarah's one of my friends as well, so I'll just like disclaimer all of that information, but honestly, I truly love this one, and you know I'm a picky reader, and so I love this one to pieces. This is a Christmas holiday ice skating rivals novella. Basically, it's set around the winter time, and the two characters in here were former ice skating partners who have now turned into rivals, hence the name of the book. And so they end up at the same kind of ski resort chalet type of place in Canada at the same time, and they have to confront all of their old feelings as well as there's still some tension and angst there and figure out what happened in the past. Like, why did their partnership break up? And so it kind of goes from there. Like I said, I beta read this one, so I read it early, but honestly, I truly loved it. It was on my TBR. Even if Sarah wouldn't have asked me to read it early, I already planned to read it. The tropes worked for me, the banter, the wit, the humor. Sarah and I have very similar like humor, and so I could totally read this book and see her humor in the writing, which I just love because like I said, it's definitely on my level of what I enjoy as well. Love the banter in here and the couple as well. It was just so good. I highly recommend a little holiday novella. It's kind of like wintry themed, so you could kind of pick it up whenever. But yeah, My Rival for Christmas by Sarah E. Green. All right, and then next up, switching to a very emotional book. So this is Last Christmas in Paris by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb. This was the historical fiction book club that I run with Tori from Novel Life. We have a Leave It to the Pros book club, which is a historical fiction book club, and this was our December pick. We wanted kind of a December wintry Christmas one to read for the month of December, and so this was one that was recommended to us, and I am so glad this was recommended. This book was amazing. It was one of my favorite books of the entire year. Love this book to pieces. If you're a fan of historical fiction, highly recommend. If you haven't read this one yet, it's so good. This is an epistolary story, which really works for me. So it is told all through letters, telegrams, newspaper articles that the characters write in here. So the entire book, as you can see, is just kind of letter format, and we get like telegrams as well, and kind of all of those things throughout the book. So this takes place during World War I, which I definitely want to read more World War I set historical fictions. So if you have any recs, drop them in the comments, please. But this book was amazing. This is the first time I've read either of these authors, and I loved this book to pieces. So like I said, World War I, it takes place from 1914 to 1918, and we're following these British characters. The audiobook in particular is fantastic because it has a kind of multicast narration. So there's different audiobook narrators for all the different kind of voices and characters that you're following. But basically we're following this like core for friend group. So in here we're following one of the main characters, the heroine, and then we also see her brother who has joined up into World War I. We're seeing his POV. We also see his best friend who is also at the war, his POV, and then we also see the first heroine, her best friend, who ends up becoming a nurse during World War I. So we're seeing all of their POVs and kind of all of their thoughts on, they thought the war wasn't going to be this huge thing, which of course turned into the Great War. I mean, it turned into this huge thing. And so they thought it would be, you know, over before Christmas, like it's not a big thing. And then of course it ended up becoming so much more, a lot of like PTSD and trauma in here that wasn't named that at the time, but the characters in here definitely go through that. So it's definitely hard-hitting, emotional. There is a romance woven throughout the story as well. So just know you're going to be in all your feels though. So yeah, love this one to pieces. I cried multiple times. I've cried multiple times talking about this book since. I loved it. Like I said, one of my favorites of the entire year. Highly recommend if you haven't checked out Last Christmas in Paris yet. All right, and then I had to switch it up and read a literary fiction to get out of that headspace. So I ended up reading Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This one had been on my TBR for years. I've been wanting to read this author for forever. Finally did in December. I just grabbed the audiobook from the library and highly recommend because it was so good. This is basically a kind of darker look at the publishing world industry in general, and it was just told so well. Highly recommend, especially like people who are already kind of in the book world, you're reading books, you want to know more about the publishing side of things. It's just an interesting satire and conversation about the publishing industry in general and how BIPOC authors are kind of seen, shown, marketed as being a BIPOC is like a marketing tool, just kind of all of those things. It was so good. Highly recommend. Basically in here we are introduced to two women at the beginning of the story. One of them is a BIPOC author who is super successful, all the success, 6-7-figure deals, all the things. She has like glowing success and all the things. And the second person is the person we follow throughout the story, kind of a colleague of hers. I think they went to like college together, and we're basically, they kind of exist in the same circle, but not really. And they just kind of have casual drinks together every now and then. And this woman is a white author, and she has not had the same success, and her books have not been well received. And she is extremely jealous of the other author's success. And so basically in here, the author who's super successful ends up passing away accidentally at the beginning of the story, and the second author ends up deciding to go and steal her last manuscript and see what happens if she publishes it. And so it kind of goes from there. It's basically like where every turn is the wrong one, where basically you're just waiting to see how much is she going to get away with, when are things going to be called out, is anything going to happen, what are the repercussions of some of these dark choices that she's taking, and it goes from there. It's just very addictive. Like I said, a very interesting take on the publishing world. I think so many more people should pick this one up. So good. Highly recommend. I can't wait to read more from this author in the future. All right, next up I went back into sports romances, and this one is Stealing for Keeps by Rebecca Jinshak. This was her final release for the year. It came out on New Year's Eve. I had an ALC of it, so I was able to listen to it early. I love this one so much. I was sent this finished copy from the publisher with like the pink end pages and the sticker sheet, if I could grab it out. It's so cute. So this one is actually a YA, but like, I don't know, I feel weird saying things are YA because I mean, another book I'm about to talk about is also set in high school, but we don't classify that as YA. I don't know, it's a thing. But anyways, basically in here, the characters are in high school and the hero is a soccer player and he ends up getting transferred to, or his family moves to a different state for him to be able to work with a specific team and a specific coach because they want the best for his future career. And so he's the new kid in town and the new kid at school. And he ends up meeting the heroine, who was an aspiring figure skater who ended up getting injured. And she basically is trying to think of what she's going to do with her life now, because her life is basically like, what am I going to do? Like, I was planning, I was training, I was on that path, and now things have changed. So like, what am I going to do? Do I have other hobbies? Kind of seeing all that exploration with her. So anyways, they meet at the beginning of the story and he is kind of into her immediately and kind of crushing on her. He is dared at a party to kiss her. And then after the kiss, he finds out that she is his new captain of his team's ex-girlfriend. So a little bit of forbidden vibes in here as well. Like I said, this one is set in high school, but you get all of those feelings with the characters of where kind of the world is their oyster. They can kind of decide which path they're going to take, what are they going to do, who are their friends, who are they going to be in a relationship with, kind of all of those feelings that you have in high school and all of those like options to feel endless for what you can do with your life at that time. I loved it so much. Definitely like a coming of age kind of story situation as well. Highly recommend Stealing for Keeps, Rebecca Jinchak. All 4 of her new releases for 2024 were 5-star reads for me. I am just obsessed with her writing so much. So yeah, highly recommend this one if you haven't checked it out yet, because it did just come out on New Year's Eve. All right, and then I finally decided to get to Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So this is a special edition that Eternal Embers did. I love this edition so much. It's so good. So glad I grabbed it. This book is a chunky book with very tiny writing. And I decided this book had been on my TBR for way too long, a couple years at this point. It was just kind of, I was worried if it would live up to the hype for me, but I decided, you know what, I can't end 2024 without finally getting to Chloe Walsh. So I'm so glad I did, because I mean, it's on my 5-star reads. I love this one to pieces. This one is set in high school as well as the previous book, and it's another sports romance. So in here, the hero is a rugby player and the heroine is new to his school, where you see things that have happened to her in her past. There was bullying. She has a lot of content warning for things that are happening in her family life. So know that going in, definitely hard hitting. And basically she has transferred schools and they kind of hit it off immediately and are very pulled to one another. Very slow burn, a very long book, which I kind of like waffle back and forth with my feelings about the length of the book, because sometimes it definitely feels its length, but at other times it's definitely needed, because we need that whole immersive feeling of the characters and all that time spent with them to end up caring about their story and about their journeys. So I love it for that. I love this one. It's the intro to their story. It's not their finished story though, because the next book in the series is. And so yeah, love this one so much. So good, very emotional, definitely some heavy hitting conversations and topics in here. I just loved how they are kind of from opposite side of the tracks, so to speak. And the hero in here is just so protective and caretaking over the heroine. Loved it so much. Johnny and Shannon like the river. Can't get over them. Binding 13, Chloe Walsh. It was worth the hype. All right, and then my last 5-star read for 2024 and for December was All the Missing Pieces by Catherine Cowles. First of all, I cannot get over how stunning this edition is that I was sent by the author in a PR box. The ombre sprayed edges, like stunning. The back as well, that shiny holographic. Cannot get over how beautiful this edition is. I love it so much. So this is the possible, I think it's going to be a series. First I thought it was a standalone, but it possibly is going to be a series. So this is the first book in her Shady Cove series, and it is so good. It just came out in January. I had an early copy of it and had to immediately jump in because Catherine Cowles is one of my favorite authors, and this book was everything that I wanted it to be. This is definitely more romantic suspense, I would say, than some of her other ones. Like, she always has romantic suspense in there, but this one really dives into that deeper. And here the heroine is a true crime podcaster and the hero is a grumpy sheriff, and basically she ends up coming to his town to follow this cold case that she's working on that she has some personal connections to. And she has found out that this serial killer that she's following, that one of his victims, possibly his first victim, is still alive and lives in this town. So she goes there because she wants to get that woman's story and do it in a very respectful way and kind of get some closure for other people who have, you know, family members a part of this case, as well as, like I said, she has some connections to it as well. You see it go from there, and you see her end up meeting the hero, who is not a fan of newcomers to the town, which he feels like she's going to be exploiting the town's tragedy and the other woman in particular, like her story. He doesn't want for the heroine in here to kind of pull up their old tragedies and things like that of the town. So he has some feelings about that. But of course, over time, he realizes that that's not what the heroine's going to do, and they end up kind of connecting and working on it together. Really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it is was so good. Definitely romantic suspense in here. Loved it so much. All the Missing Pieces, it just came out on January 7th, so highly recommend grabbing it, which this is her first brand new book with her publisher. So good. And I think people said the audiobook was available like on Hoopla, so definitely check there if you haven't. The audios from Catherine are always fantastic. Highly recommend check out all the Missing Pieces. All right, so those were all of my 5-star reads for October through December of 2024. So many amazing ones. I had 14, I think, that we talked about today. So yeah, loved being able to gush about all of these. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. If you are going to pick any of these up now, I would love to know that. Like I said, they're all linked in the description of the video below as well, so you can go check them out. I loved all of these so much, and I cannot wait to do this video again going into 2025. Like I said, I'm probably going to do it every 2 months, or maybe just depending on how many 5-star reads I have at the time. I'll make them sooner or later depending on that, so we shall see. I cannot wait for all the 5-star reads, hopefully, that we all have in 2025. Definitely let me know in the comments if you had any 5-star reads that you want to share. I would love to know. And if you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a star emoji, because we're talking about all the 5 stars. So yeah, leave me a star emoji. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.